And I now invite the distinguished representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, speaking on behalf of the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations, to take the floor.
Thank you. Mr. President, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has the honor to take the floor on behalf of the group of friends in defense of the United Nations Charter. Its member states would like to thank you for convening this important meeting in the light of the continuing worsening of the situation on the ground. Mr. President, more than 2 months have gone by now since the beginning of this regrettable spiral of violence and destruction, which has caused the death of thousands of innocent civilians, particularly women, boys and girls, including more than 100 of UN humanitarian workers, and the destruction of thousands of homes in the Gaza Strip. 2 months have gone by, during which the Palestinian civilian population in the Gaza Strip have lived hell on earth, as described by the United Nations Secretary General. There is today no safe space in the Gaza Strip for the civilian population. They are being bombed indiscriminately day and night from the air, from the sea, and from the land, along with cruel land operations by the Israeli occupying forces. There is no space for civil infrastructure that is safe from air attacks. Refugee camps, which house more than 1.3 million Palestinian civilians out of the more than 1.9 million which were forcibly displaced during recent months, have been the target of repeated attacks. The Commissioner General of UNRWA also recently warned, and as the figures show, that the United Nations flag is no longer any protection for Gazan civilians. The schools and hospitals have not been liberated, and they undergo constant attacks. The lives of babies, girls, boys, women, men, old people, the wounded are all in danger. International humanitarian law has been totally neglected over recent weeks. So the question is, where are all those people who in other cases have appealed to the notion of the responsibility to protect for the interest and well-being of the human rights of millions of Palestinians who have been subject to years of aggression under the legal Israeli occupation? How much longer will we be witnesses of the use of the veto in the Security Council to protect Israel, the occupying power, from its accountability for the crimes that it is perpetrating blatantly and systematically in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip? Mr. President, today the international community is witnessing a genuine carnage against the Palestinian people. We regret to admit it, but the body that the United Nations Charter entrusted with ensuring the maintenance of international peace and security has been incapable on many occasions, and the most recently being last Friday, to fully and effectively exercise its functions. It has not even been able to adopt a very necessary resolution demanding unequivocally a ceasefire. We cannot deliberately ignore the humanitarian catastrophe that is taking place under our eyes. We must act. We must do so now to avoid further losses of human life. As was correctly stated by the Commissioner General of UNRWA, the humanitarian situation now is unsustainable. Now, in this context, the member states of our group of friends of the United Nations Charter must insist on the importance of ensuring the full respect for and the upholding of the provisions of international humanitarian law, including the principles of proportionality and distinction, as well as the safety of all civilians, particularly boys and girls, and all humanitarian and medical staff on the ground, in line with the relevant provisions of the General Assembly and Security Council resolutions, including Resolution A/ES10/21, which was approved more than a month ago by this body in the face of the ongoing crisis. The current situation is really a breaking point, as the Secretary General of the United Nations stated. He invoked the provisions of Article 99 of the Charter, and we welcome this step. We believe that this is the right way forward in the light of the seriousness and the continuing worsening of the situation on the ground. Therefore, we reiterate our demand for an immediate ceasefire and the end of the ongoing atrocities. This is not just necessary in the name of humanity, but also to ensure that humanitarian assistance, including crucial supplies for saving lives, such as sufficient fuel, to ensure basic humanitarian operations can be undertaken, as well as food, medicine, drinking water, should enter the Gaza Strip and be rapidly distributed to all those who desperately need it. In the same manner, we also call for the adoption of urgent measures aimed at guaranteeing, on the one hand, the security and well-being of all civilians, and also to ensure the provision of international protection to the Palestinian civilian population in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. And this on the basis of the recommendations made by the United Nations Secretary General in his 2018 report to the Secretary General and other relevant resolutions from the Security Council. Mr. President, we also renew our appeal that we ensure unhindered humanitarian access in a safe and on a large-scale way in order to meet the urgent needs that have been created by the current catastrophe in Gaza. And it is a genuine crisis which has been provoked by human action. And this is key to avoid the total collapse of critical civilian infrastructure, which would lead inevitably to more civilian victims and to starvation, illness, poverty, and suffering and desperation, which is even greater, worsening the already humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where more than half of the population is made up of boys, girls, and refugees, and more than 85% have been internally displaced since the beginning of this escalation in violence that began more than 2 months ago. Once again, we insist that a lasting, comprehensive solution to the Palestinian question in all its dimensions and in line with international law can only be achieved through peaceful means. Therefore, we ask for urgent measures to be taken to deal with the underlying causes of this prolonged conflict. At its heart, there are years of the occupation and its consequences, and to also establish the responsibility for those crimes that have been committed. Now more than ever before, we must urgently establish a credible political horizon leading to bringing about the right to self-determination for the Palestinian people by achieving independence and sovereignty for the Palestinian state within pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. That means a political horizon that leads to achieving the two-state solution on the basis of the relevant resolutions of the United Nations. In conclusion, we reassert our full commitment to preserve, promote, and defend the United Nations Charter. This is a historic treaty which represents a genuine act of faith in the best of humanity, and so far, although it's been the subject of ongoing attacks, continues to make us linked to our promise to protect future generations from the scourge of war and to ensure respect for the dignity and the value of the individual. Let us act collectively and in a responsible way without any further delay to meet our duties under the United Nations Charter. And its effects will include the recent adoption by an overwhelming majority of members of the Arab group of that resolution. Thank you very much.
I should like to thank the representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela